Hey, what's up guys? Gons here with this week's word of encouragement. It comes from Galatians 5 verses 13 through 17. Here's what it says. For you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. But I say walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. Now, of course, this is right before the passages that talk about works of the flesh in contrast to the fruit of the Spirit. But I wanted to focus in on these 5 passages here because I think it will encourage you in operating this upcoming week. First off, for you were called to freedom. Now, the word there, freedom, in the Greek, eleutheria, which means freedom or liberty, especially from slavery. And the work on the cross by Jesus Christ has brought us freedom, and I think everyone understands that. But the reason why this is important, and Paul brings it up, is because he says here, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. So this tells us that first, clearly we can choose to use this liberty as an opportunity for the flesh. And really the focus here is pleasing ourselves at the expense of others. That's why it says here, but through love serve one another. Paul is explicit in talking about loving others here. The flesh expects others to conform to us and doesn't care a lot about what others think. But when we serve one another through love, we conquer flesh. And this form of liberty was exactly what was patterned by Jesus when he walked. He served one another through love. Then it says, for the whole law is fulfilled in one word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Clearly, Paul here is going after the legalists who say, you have to keep the law, those who say that salvation comes through works. But that's not what he's talking about here. And the fact that loving your neighbor as yourself is something that fulfills the whole law has been twisted, thinking that we have to love ourselves before we can love others. But that's not the point here. In reality, the loving of your neighbor is the ultimate example that leads to loving yourself, not the other way around. Because when we love ourselves, we tend to do things at the expense of others, while if we love others, we are able to express that love, and in that way, we are able to take care of ourselves. And the whole concept of love your neighbor as yourself is a deep one that we don't have time to really dig into here, but ponder on it this week. But then Paul goes on to say, but if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. The church right now goes after one another really hard on different topics and different things, and you can see that we are devouring each other. And it's pretty sad to see it all happen, but Paul's right. If you bite and devour one another, watch out that we are not consumed by one another. And it goes on, but I say walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. And this really drives home the point here. When you operate in the freedom you have in the Spirit, and you walk by the Spirit, then you won't succumb to the gratification and desires of the flesh. Because it says here, the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and vice versa, because they're opposed to each other. So when we walk in the Spirit, it may feel unnatural to us. It may feel like, ooh, this feels strange and awkward and unusual. But that's because the flesh opposes what the Spirit wants to do. So my encouragement to you this week through the word here in Galatians 5 is to walk in the Spirit, be led by the Holy Spirit in your week, and you may come to do things that are uncomfortable for you in your flesh, but ultimately express God's love of your neighbor and ultimately yourself, where you're operating in that freedom. So take it to heart and hope you have an awesome week. God bless.